And they just boot me back out to the beginning. Alright. So, this is the part where I talk a lot. So let's get ready. 'Cause this is it. I'm done with this game officially. It's all over. Here's what I gotta say. Wait, do I keep that as clear data? No? You don't even get clear data for the... That's interesting. Because they didn't let me save it after it finished. It just kind of ended. Alright, so here we go. Let's talk about Tales of Zestiria as a whole. Alright. So for everyone who stood through these 19 live streams, I have completed this game in pretty much every single facet. I've done all the quests, I've completed the main stories, I've done, like, I'm pretty sure everything. Like, all the post-game stuff. I think the only stuff that's left is stuff tied to trophies, and even then, that's not something I want to do, really. Because, like, it would require beating Tales of Zestiria, like, at least 3 or 4 more times, and I'm like, I'm kind of through with it. For now, at least. Maybe I'll come back to the game next year. So as I said last stream, I think it was, my opinion of Tales of Zestiria has indeed been raised after playing through it again. I don't think it's as terrible as I thought it was last year, but it definitely does still have a lot of flaws. Like, we'll get to the DLC soon. But, the main game as it is pretty great, and, like, once again, I think the opening of the series is really interesting. I like the chapter in Lady Lake. I like becoming the shepherd and learning about his duty, and then the rest of the game is trying to execute that duty. I like that in concept, and the thing about Zestiria is that it at least manages to run with the concept to an extent. No, it runs with the concept all the way, I feel. It's just that towards the latter half of the game, once you reach Stapgut Moor and the Ruined Tower, it just becomes boring, because then you realize there's no actual overall conflict, because Heldalf and his cronies are so hands-off as villains that it never really feels like what you're doing matters so much. It does in the context of the world. Restoring blessings is incredibly important. But, like, as a player, it doesn't feel super accomplishing, to be completely honest. And, like, in the beginning of the game, I feel like you have a goal, and you have constant things that you're doing, because, like, the beginning of the game is boosted by the trials and learning about Heldalf and everything. And it all kind of comes to a head after you complete the trials, and you go back to Pendrago, and Dezel dies. Like, that whole part of the game feels really well thought out. After Dezel dies, and you just return to purifying the world, and going to Zapgut and everything, that's when the game loses a lot of its direction, I feel. Like, even the characters don't really have direction. It's like, let's just purify the world and see if we can figure out how to defeat Heldalf. And that's pretty much the last of the game, dealing with Zapgut Moor. And like, I mean, the game is... The ending of the game is blocked off until you can get all the earthly Historias. That's the thing. The characters are trying to figure out what's up, but what's his name, Old Man, refuses to tell them until they can piece together the whole story behind Heldalf. And that makes sense to an extent, but also, like, come on, you know? So that's really where I think that the weakness of the game lies in, that it just kind of feels boring from, like, an overall perspective. Like, playing the game itself, it's a Tales of game. Tales of games are some of the most fun games to play, like, consistently. Like, their gameplay style is just a buttload of fun. You know, whether it's Zestiria, Symphonia, Abyss, Vesperia, even the little bit I played at Tales of the World, the Tales of the gameplay is always fun, and that's, like, the hook of it. It's everything else surrounding it that has to lift it up, which in Symphonia it did, in Abyss it did, in Vesperia it did. In this game it didn't so much. The protagonists are all great. I love them all. Like, you all know, I love Rose. Absolutely love Rose. And all the other protagonists are great too. They all do their job really well. Yeah, the Iris Gem Hunt is definitely the lowest point for me, since you basically have to wander aimlessly to find the little chunks of backstory. Yeah, Yeah, pretty much. Backstory you probably don't care about. Though, once again, that backstory you're getting is the most backstory you get to any of the villains. Heldolf is the most well-developed villain of the game, and in the end, he's just, I want to rule the world because evil. You know, he's like, the world kind of shit on me, so now I want to shit on the world. That's Heldolf in a nutshell. But at least, yeah, there's more to him. Maltran, we know nothing about her, really. We know she apparently had an encounter with Hellions in the past, and that was it. Like, I swear to God, the guy, that random civilian you talk to who gives you that backstory, was totally added into the game, like, when they realized, wait, Maltran doesn't have any foreshadowing. Because it's like, when you do a twist villain, or you do a character who's going to have a villain reveal, they have to have, like, foreshadowing, or it has to be interesting, at least. But no, it's just like, nope, she's evil now. It's like, alright. I think she definitely would have been more interesting if she wasn't evil. Because her character archetype, the way she was introduced, is the kind of character you come into a game and be like, well, that one's definitely going to turn out to be evil or betray you. And it would have been more interesting if she wasn't, you know? Because it'd be the unexpected way to go about it. It's like Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. Once again, that game had its final villain, if you can even call him that, is like obvious. Like when you first meet him, you're like, well, you're totally the bad guy in this game. But then, no, he's not. He's actually one of the most interesting characters in the game, and he's not a bad guy. Like, him being the final boss fight does not make him the bad guy. It's like Vesperia as well. The final boss fight in Vesperia, like, he wasn't really the bad guy. He was just doing something that the characters disagreed with, and that made it interesting. You know, these two main villains are these two final bosses of Vesperia and Cyber Sleuth, really freaking interesting. Beyond that, and of course Lunaire and Simone, whatever. And the supporting cast, once again, whatever. Alicia, I'm glad she had that DLC. That DLC really made up for how poorly she was. Should I really go that far? Do you think the DLC was, like, enough of a, sorry that we didn't use Alicia in the story enough kind of thing? Was it? Like, from my perspective right now, I'll say, yeah, kinda. But I still wish she was used more in the story. She should have been a recruitable character, like, for the post-game or something. Like, not just to, like, forget about her. Because once again, if you don't play the DLC, she's completely left out of the ending and the final thing. She's not even there in Last and Bell when the characters are having their final conversation. Like, we're gonna go out to... She's not even there. Like, after that, you unlock, like, some things where it's like, oh, let's go talk to Sergei and have our final conversation with Sergei. You know, our final meaningful conversation with Sergei. It's a really nice one. It's like, now let's go have our final conversation with Alicia. You don't have a final conversation with Alicia. Saray stands there while she talks to, I think, a different politician. Then she talks to her maid. Then she talks to herself. And that's it. And Saray's like, that's good. And then he leaves. Which, I mean, that's Saray's character. But it just drives me nuts that that's how they say farewell to Alicia's character in the base game. It doesn't feel like enough. The conflict in Berseria is definitely more personal than in Zestiria, and I feel like it's stronger for it. And even though you do get backstory through the Earth Pulse, you don't have to go on a scavenger hunt to get all the pieces, and you don't feel as disconnected from it as you are in Zestiria. I think I warmed up more to the DLC this time around. I think it did a better job of giving her a more meaningful role than I gave it credit for. Yeah, I was expecting a lot. Honestly, I went into the DLC expecting nothing. Like, expecting a lot less, because my sister, who has already looked into this game and the DLC, she, like, watched Let's Plays of it. Not Let's Plays, playthroughs, like, no commentary. Just because she likes Tales games, so she wanted to look into it. She left the series as a whole unimpressed. And I told her after I finished the game, I'm like, you know what? I need to get the DLC because there has to be a better ending. It was so trash. And she's like, nah, the DLC is not worth it. And I got really disappointed, but I'm like, you know what? I believe her because, like, you know, I trust her. And now, after finishing the DLC, I can kind of see what she meant. Like, I still think that as a whole, the DLC was great. Great. Lunaire, though, really, really, really brought it down. If there was a final boss fight against him, and if we actually got to kill him again, then the DLC would be perfect. But leaving it open like that was just dumb. What they should have done was just not use Lunera at all, because he died in the story. There's no logical explanation to how he survived. Simone coming back makes perfect sense. She didn't need to be involved with anyone else. It just should have been her. And then we talked to her, have that, like, Alicia thanking Simone, I think, was a good closing arc to Simone's story. You know, because Simone's whole thing was that she realized she's a seraph whose blessing brings misfortune. And she's like, so what use am I as a seraph? And in the end, her powers gave Alicia closure, and in turn, she thanks Simone for giving her that opportunity, which in turn gave Simone some sense of worth. And so that she realized that she's not completely, you know, like, her existence isn't useless, basically. Like, there is something there. And I think that that was good. You know, they were able to at least close out that story decently. Lunera, though, like, what the fuck? He's so unimportant. He's just a thug. He's an uninteresting... They tried to do Zagi again, and they failed. That's basically it. That's Lunera. He's like Zagi, but not good. Zagi was fucking incredible in Vesperia. And even then, Zagi, you can also say, was just a grunt, because where did he come from? Like, who was he? Who hired him to kill Flynn? Why did he become so obsessed with Yuri? You know, all these kind of things. You could wonder about it, but it's like, well, he's obviously crazy. Like, from day one, he's clearly off his rocker. And I think that the additional dungeon just kind of being like, well, maybe he was secretly a child of the full moon too? Wink, wink. Like, that just added another layer of intrigue to his character, which I was totally fine with. Zagi took being the crazy guy, and he did all the good stuff with it, you know? Lunera didn't do anything. He was just crazy because, crazy guys, right? You know? Yeah, Lunera does have a pretty great design. He does look pretty freaky. Just that they didn't do a lot with him. Zagi's really good, though. Anything else we gotta say before we close this out? So, hitting up the DLC, I was initially unhappy. After I played the DLC for the first time, I was bummed out that they decided to take Alicia and Rose's relationship and make them hate each other. Because I'm like, that's not the impression I got at all. But once again, Alicia and Rose barely interacted in the main story. The most they did was when you met Alicia back on that on that bridge, and she for some reason couldn't see the Seraph anymore because she can only see them when she's the Squire, which I'm like, really? I could have sworn she saw them before she became a Squire. Regardless, that conversation though, where they were like bonding and making fun of Saray and everything, that was great. And it's like, that's their dynamic. That's what I believe their dynamic would be. But then this DLC started, and they didn't even like each other. Like, they just got into a fight over nothing. But I guess when you look at the context, Alicia wanted to know what happened to Saray, and that was, I guess, obviously still a sore spot for Rose, and she didn't want to talk about it. And so she was just trying to deflect and push Alicia away, which I guess was the whole fight that they had. But Alicia's like, nah, no, I need to know because he was my friend too, you know? So I was a little disappointed that they went with a really prickly relationship between them for most of the DLC. But it makes some form of sense because it's like high stress levels all around. Rose has never been good at dealing with emotions and feelings. She's more the person to lash out as opposed to like consider. She even says it when Alicia gives her that cool down hug. She's like, well, I don't have time for this sentimental crap. She's never had time for sentimental crap. The only time she ever really got sentimental was after Dezel's death. And towards the end of the game as well. And beyond that, Rose's defining characteristic is that she's just real. She's a realist. She's not an optimist. She's not a pessimist. She's just real. You know, that's her whole deal. And so she looks at situations for what they are, and she's like, well, if we got to get through this, we got to kill these people. And that's basically it. That's the long and short of it. She is straight line. That's her character, basically. She doesn't have a lot. She doesn't think about a lot of things a lot. In terms of like whenever characters get down, they always have to have these discussions with each other, or they have these long monologues and stuff. But she just skips. She's like, no, fuck it, and then she stabs something. You know, it's part of the reason why I like her, and it's part of the reason why I understand why she and Alicia didn't exactly mesh for the DLC. But I still wish that they just I guess having a hunky-dory buddy cop trip with Alicia and Rose would have been a little too much, but at the same time I wish it was not so prickly. Though I do understand. And it did give Alicia some time to shine, since she became a lot less serious when dealing with Rose, you know, because Rose is Rose, and it's like there's no point in being all fancy around Rose because she doesn't get it. That was my initial disappointment with the DLC. As I got on with it, though, I understood and I enjoyed it more, and I did enjoy playing it. So I think I would have a more... Once again, I deleted my save file in the middle of this live stream, so let's try to ignore that. But even with that, I did enjoy it. Like, the final dungeon wasn't really as big, like... Just the DLC was fun. I just liked it. Like, revisiting some seeing Marlin and Lastenbell again, going back to Glaven Basin, and then finally through that cave, the mountains, and then this big dungeon that takes us back to Camlon, which I honestly thought the dungeon would lead us to like Camlon itself, and like the last area of the game we were like, okay, we're gonna go through Camlon and we're gonna go to Maltelis' shrine, and then we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna see Sorey, like actually see him and talk to him that way. Like, he's not gonna talk back, obviously, but like Alicia would do what she did at the end of the thing. But then the dungeon led us out in the top of the crater, and it's like, so I guess we're not gonna see Sorey, or we're not gonna go down there. And so it makes you question how Rose got out of there, because the ending of the game shows her getting out of there. Is there anything I missed? Loon, you think that there's anything I didn't give my thoughts on, or you think that's complete enough? Because I think I hit on everything. And of course, the Tales of Zestiria logo is Maltelis, I do believe. Yeah, I'm very curious about Brasilia because of Zavid's connection to Brasilia and all the things. Edna's brother, his connection to Brasilia, and the mark in Maltelis' shrine, in Artorias' throne. There was that conversation where they saw a crest and they're like, is this Maltelis' crest? No, it's for this seraph instead, or this thing instead. And they're like, what's that? And then they just moved on, and it's like, and apparently that's what, a big part of Brasilia, or at least a notable part of Brasilia. I'm interested. I really am. I'm also, because I know it's the same world, so I'm curious as to what locations and how they'll look. Because I feel like Brasilia probably does better what Symphonia 2 did, because like, oh gosh. Yeah, like seriously, I was gonna make some connection to what Zestiria did right versus Symphonia 2, which was really, really bad, but we don't need to bring that here. So as I've said before, I didn't say this on stream before, but now that Zestiria is done, I'm actually gonna go back and play Vesperia again. I'm not gonna do a Let's Stream Vesperia New Game Plus, even though I think I should, because I think that'd be pretty great because it's a fun game. But I just kind of want to enjoy Vesperia again, like on my own time, like sitting on the couch and not having to talk all the time, just playing it again because it's a super fun game. So I think that's what I'll do instead. I'm gonna play through Vesperia again, and then when I complete Vesperia, I'm gonna pick up Tales of Berseria, and you'll hear from me first what I think about that game. I'm looking forward to it, like big time. It's a great time. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it so much since it came on my playthrough with Zero with such mixed feelings. Yeah, same here. So yeah, I mean, yeah, my feelings for Zestiria were negative the first time, and now they're kind of like, all right, you know, Zestiria, you have a right to exist. That's the main thing. It's a good fun game. I still wouldn't totally recommend it to someone because I have so many issues. But I mean, at the same time, it depends on the kind of person it is. If it's someone I know who's like, stories and games, and I love being gripped by a plot, then maybe check out Abyss or Symphonia first, and then maybe come to this one. But if it's someone who's just looking for a fun RPG to play that they can get into and have a good RPG experience, then I definitely recommend this game. If someone's just like, hey, what's a good RPG you know that won't like kill my time? Because this game is really small, like it's short compared to Symphonia and Abyss and Vesperia. I definitely feel like you can get through it in a good, at a good rate, and it's easy. So you know, there's that too. This series has helped me come to terms with Zestiria, and now I can appreciate it a lot more. Good, I'm glad. My whole philosophy was I just wanted to I wanted to just be like, hey, this game sucks. I was right, but that isn't how it turned out being. It turned out more being like, oh, this game's in the middle somewhere.